Welcome back to the Commstock Channel. My name is Brian Hendrickson, and today I have Matthew Kruse with us. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Remember, we are still accepting your yield results, and don't forget to send in those pictures and videos as well. You can send them in at report@commstock.com. Thanks for being on. So, as some of our viewers know, you are our connection to Brazil. So that means we are talking Brazil today. Let's kind of get started on that because we have a little bit to cover. Where are they at in their harvest season, and how is their weather performing?
Well, yeah, for the most part, they're kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, season-wise from what we are. So we were just talking beforehand how here in Iowa, we're just gotten over the hump here in terms of harvest. We're probably 3/4 of the way done in soybean harvest and halfway done with corn. And they're just kind of getting started on planting down there. So it's kind of the opposite end there. And since I think most of the trade now feels like they have a pretty good handle on what yields are, not that they can't make some adjustments yet, and they probably will. It's not going to change very much at this point. We have a pretty good handle on what the yields are going to be. And so I think a lot of the trade is now going to focus on planting season in Brazil going forward, because we are entering into kind of the critical planting window, especially in Mato Grosso. And so the planting, if you can take a look at that one planting progress chart, their planting speed is not as quick as it was last year, but it's still moving within their historical 5-year average pace. I think they're probably narrowing in on 20% complete overall in Brazil. Mato Grosso, it usually gets an earlier start, so they're leading the way. They're probably close to 45% done in Mato Grosso right now. But there's other places that haven't even started. Yeah, on my family's farm in Minas Gerais, we usually don't start planting until about a month later. So, we haven't even started on our farm in Minas Gerais and don't plan to, for several weeks yet until the rainy season starts to pick up. And so, it's I think that farmers will continue to make progress and keep planting, but it's probably going to lag last year's pace and just move at a little bit slower rate than what they otherwise could. If you take a look at the weather map there, they're still showing a lot of dryness in the 10-day forecast. Now, there are pockets that are getting rain, and of course, it varies from region to region. But in the case of Mato Grosso, the western part of the state is getting, some good chances of rain, maybe 1 to 3 inches. The center part of the state, where most of the production is concentrated, maybe 1 inch. That would be okay, a good shot of rain in Iowa. But in Brazil, where you have 100-degree temperatures right now and very low soil holding or water holding capacity in the soil, that 1 inch rain isn't going to get you very far. And you have to remember that they're coming off of a 5-month dry season, and so the it's absolutely void of all moisture. And so getting 1 inch is just going to soak right in the soil and evaporate with 100-degree temperatures. And so nevertheless, farmers are moving forward, but they're those that are advancing their planning are taking a big risk. And so I've talked to, there are farmers that are already done planting in parts of Mato Grosso, and I know farmers that haven't even started just because they're wanting to see more rainfall forecast or rainfall confirmation in the forecast, I should say, before they start planting. And there's others that are maybe more risk averse that are saying, look, I'm going to risk it. I want to get a head start on planting, and I believe the rains will come. And if that does happen, that'll allow them to begin their second crop corn harvest behind that in January, February. And so I think that's the mentality there of speeding up their harvest. Now, I think there might be some cases of replanting, especially in eastern Mato Grosso, guys that have planted because they've hardly getting the drop on the eastern side of the state. So, but you look in the southern part of the state, they're getting too much rain. They need it to stop raining for 10 days or more where every week they're getting 2, 3, 4 inches, and there's a lot of flooding going on. It's slowing up the planting. It's not too bad for what has been planted. It's obviously getting good moisture. I suppose in some of the first crop corn, there's maybe cases where the corn is yellowing and it's leaching because there's so much rain, it's just leaching out all the nitrogen that's been applied, or they can't even get the nitrogen on. But I suppose it's better that way than where it's been too dry there in the past. So that's kind of where they're at right now. If you look at that one rainfall chart in Mato Grosso, you can kind of see how the rainfall varies right from time of year. And so in our summer, kind of that June, July, August, I mean, they pretty much don't get hardly anything. And the October time period, they usually on average can see 4.5 inches just in that 1 month, and they're probably around half of that right now. And so it's not that it's not raining. It's not necessarily that it's drought. It's just that it's not raining enough, or not raining what they're used to and what they need, especially with how hot it is. And so I think there's some more rain showing up kind of the very end of October, but there's also forecasts calling for more heat as well, and that will offset that to a certain extent. So it's a little bit rocky start to planting in Mato Grosso, but there's still a lot of planting window left. So that's kind of where it's at.
What is the amount of rain that is kind of the special number that those farmers are wanting? Because like you said, it rained an inch, that's really not enough. But I feel like if it rains 6 inches, is that too
Yeah.
much?
That's what people always focus on, is the quantity of rain, and which is important, right? You associate more rain with more productivity. And so, there's years where you could easily get 30 or 40 inches of rainfall, but I would argue that in my experience in Brazil, the distribution of that rainfall is as important or even more important, because I wrote about this in our Commstock report the other day, that in my experience, I had one season where it was probably our best production season, and yet we had the lowest total amount of rainfall. But it was so perfectly distributed throughout the season that the crop never really went without moisture. And so what happens when you get these monsoonal deluges of rainfall in these tropical regions, that you get 4 inches or 6 inches in a short period of time, and it's more than the crop can consume, and a lot of it washes away, and then you go 3 weeks or more without a rain, and so that's not real good for the crop either. And so ideally, if you can get a nice shot of moisture, of rain, every few days or every week, where it's evenly distributed, you're a lot better off.
So let's kind of switch things up with the projection of next season's crop in Brazil. Where do you kind of see them landing with this?
Yeah, so CONAB has already come out with their preseason estimates of what they're looking to produce for next year. They're yet again looking for a record large soybean crop. I think they're talking about an acreage expansion of 2.8, close to 3%, coming in right under 112 million acres. And you compare that to the United States at what they plan, I think, closer to 87 million acres this year. And so their soybean acres continue to expand. They're actually expecting a slightly smaller production in Mato Grosso, in that center west region, for these reasons that we've talked about, where El Nino is typically a little bit drier in the northern part of Brazil. And so they're expecting a lower production in these large growing regions like Mato Grosso. However, they're expecting a rebound in production from southern Brazil, which has been decimated in the past. And so the numbers thrown out are like 162 to 164 million metric tons, compared to about 156 million metric tons this previous season for soybeans. In the case of corn, they're actually looking at roughly 5% smaller crop for next season. And a lot of that has to do with reduction in acres, just because corn prices are underwater in Brazil. They've dropped tremendously just in the last several months, and so I think farmers are pretty sensitive to that. There is a close to a 2.5 million acre reduction in acres overall of corn acres, take them to about 52 to 52.5 million acres in Brazil. And so we haven't seen that in quite a while. I think maybe 2017 was the last time that we saw a reduction in corn acres. And so it doesn't happen very often where the Brazil crop is expected to get smaller in the case of corn, because there's been a general increasing trend in both corn and soybeans. But that's what they're expecting for next year. And that makes sense just because farmers are not very optimistic about the prices of corn. And so they're shifting more of that crop to soybeans.
What is this going to do to the market of all of this with the soybean and corn? What is your kind of projections on that?
Well, I think in the case of the soybeans, obviously we've picked up here close to 60 cents just in the last week or 10 days. And so I think Brazil has a lot to do with that. Not everything, some of it's the markets. Obviously last week we saw a little bit tighter ending stocks in both corn and beans. We're also getting, towards the back half of the harvest. And so everyone's looking forward to this harvest low kicking in and starting off this seasonal tendency of higher prices going into November. And, so we're also cautiously optimistic that that's the case too. But I also think that, because of the dryness and the heat that's going on in Brazil, and that you might see some replanting. And so that those types of things are going to continue to kind of support the soybean market as well. I think hopefully if we see this pullback in corn acres in Brazil, that will also be supportive of corn prices here in the United States as well, just because they'll, that if they're producing less, they're going to have to export just a little bit less. And I think you could see the same thing in the United States too, where we probably overdid it. We did overdo it, planting too many corn acres here this season. And so I think you'll see a little bit of a correction going back the other way here in the United States as well, which should long-term be more supportive to corn prices here.
All right, that'll do it for this episode. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
Want more premium content? Subscribe to the Commstock Report, where you will receive 2 reports daily. Want more video content? We are on Facebook, YouTube, and now TikTok. So don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe.